sometimes you learn that there's a price to be paid when you don't prioritize the recruitment of experienced people to staff these agencies. And the White House staffers have almost become household names. They really do sort of mimic in real time the characters on his reality show. You know, you're hired, you're fired. But it's really serious work that happens at the agencies. And I wonder if you could react to Jen's point about how low down the pecking order he has to go just for an acting HHS secretary.
I think it is stunning, if you understand the pecking order, how far down we see this replacement. But if you look at how you don't see a lot of appointments in the State Department while we're in this rhetorical war with North Korea and other hotspots around the world, we are dealing with a White House that has left vacant many key positions that are detrimental to our safety as well as our services. And we shouldn't take that for granted. And those that he's put there has done the most public display of on-the-job training in power that I've ever seen. I mean, I was in Europe and Africa this week. People are laughing at us because these guys are obviously learning as they go and fumbling through most of it. But when you look at their background, there's no reason to believe they would have known what to do at the level they're at. They don't even have enough sensitivity to surround themselves with people that know what they're doing.
All right, let me add to the conversation Jason Johnson, politics editor for The Root, as well as an MSNBC contributor. Jason, thanks for being here with us on what turned out to be a bigger breaking news day than we thought it would be. But first, your reaction to the resignation of Secretary Price.
I'm going to have to ask Rev for lottery numbers. That was a great prediction that he had just like 5 minutes later.
He's my date.
You know, look, I think this is probably General Kelly coming into play because remember, we've got a president who has spent more in the first 8 months of his presidency on his security detail for his family to go on vacation than Obama spent in 8 years. So I don't think he's morally opposed to what Tom Price has done, but he does have a chief of staff now who's like, look, we got to clean this place up. We've got to have some symbolic heads rolling from time to time, and that's what I think this resignation/firing is really about.
Let me ask you, I mean, this was a former member of Congress who obviously had sort of existed in a normal system to the degree that you think the House of Representatives is normal, and we'll give it that compared to the Trump White House. But I wonder if you can weigh in on the conversation we've been having about whether the president has set a tone from the top about character, and if the character and the sort of lack of a moral or ethical compass, and frankly, the disregard for the taxpayer dollars, which I'm guessing is the only part of this story that really resonates with his base. If you think any of that drove it, or if you think it was what you started with, a big media distraction.
Well, I think it's a mixture of both, Nicole. You know, the president establishes what kinds of relationships and what's going to be acceptable in this White House, right? George Bush was like, hey, it's about loyalty. You got to be loyal to me, and if you're loyal to me, I'll work with you. Barack Obama was, you know, don't cause trouble, be practical. Well, Donald Trump has pretty much established that you can do whatever you want because you never know if you can trust me one way or another. And when you have that kind of work environment, everybody's out for themselves. People don't know if they're going to get held accountable. They don't know if they're going to be insulted. They don't know if they'll be insulted and then brought back into the inner circle. So when you have that sort of poor leadership standard, it doesn't establish a ground level for what people think they're supposed to be doing that job. Tom Price should know better as a member of Congress, but I think it's sort of like it's a virus that spreads from Donald Trump that people just think they can do whatever they want unless they get in trouble.
And I asked you the question about distractions because we started the week together on Monday talking about how the president himself created a massive distraction, one meant to sort of provoke and poke the most divisive elements of his own base. So I find it ironic when people posit the theory that someone else is getting fired for sort of messing up his media cycle when it's usually Donald Trump on Twitter ruining his own media cycles.
Right. And he's always running his mouth. He's always distracting from issues that are more important. You've still got 2.3 million people who are suffering in Puerto Rico, and the president wants to keep fighting. And now you've got NFL players, you know, sort of playing Simon Says. But here's something else, Nicole. And again, it's always a disturbing indicator as to what our president's priorities are. While he is screaming and yelling as to whether or not Puerto Rico has paid its debts and whether or not NFL players are respectful, we have an incident I wrote about on The Root today at the Air Force Academy Prep School where 5 entering cadets had racial slurs written all over their dorm doors. And there's this huge investigation. And a week where the president has been demanding that mostly African-American athletes kneel and appreciate the military, it's another reminder that the military has still not always been an open place for black people, and that's not something he wants to talk about. out.
Jonathan Lemire, we haven't heard from the president yet, but I think he's about to land in New Jersey. Do we expect to? Already landed, I think.
Yeah, I was just talking to a colleague who's there with him in the pool. We are awaiting word. There's some confusion here. Earlier today, the White House suggested that Tom Price had not offered his resignation. I mean, as of an hour ago, that was the word.
So do you think they bungled the firing? I mean, let me read the statement again. So we've got, and let me give it a timestamp here. 4:36 p.m.
If the resignation letter must have come in a very short window, then otherwise they were misleading us in their earlier statement.
Imagine that. Let me read the statement one more time. At 4:36, a statement from the press secretary, who certainly holds herself out as being in the loop, more so than her predecessor, saying Secretary of Health and Human Services Tom Price offered his resignation earlier today. So what you're saying, Jonathan, is that the president went out on departure and said, I don't know, I guess giving him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he hadn't decided whether or not to accept it? Is that the only explanation?
It's possible, and I'm just seeing here that he has boarded now. He's deplaned and boarded Marine One and left. He did not respond to shouted questions. So the president himself has not cleared up this discrepancy, nor has he weighed in yet on Price's departure.
I think he will, though. And I think that,
so.
Again, you are seeing on-the-job training. Somebody could have bundled it. Somebody may not have done it. They may have done it in a short window. But that's the kind of administration we are looking at here. So why are we in any way surprised that they don't know how to handle Puerto Rico? Because their heart's not there, their passion's not there. They only seem to try to get it when it's something that deals with their base or their preference, and that is bad.
And I will just say, we can't forget the context of this in terms of this administration's firings over time. And if you include the campaign itself, there have been a few different buckets of a lot of firings, right? You have Russia-related firings, you have functioning of the administration.
You have blackmail-related firings.
Right.
We put Flynn in that category of his own.
Exactly. Right. Functioning of the administration, Russia, blackmail, whatever you want to call it.
This is sort of the scandal.
This is corruption. I would call this corruption.
Yeah.
So it's just a new category, perhaps related to the others. But this White House and this team, if you include the campaign as well, has lost an insane number of people due to issues in these categories. And I don't remember another administration where it's been this bad.
Jen, that's a good point. You know, I know people working in there. I don't want to call them out because I don't want any of their bosses to know that I know them. But, you know, it's not a happy workplace. Yeah. And anyone that knows anything about how to staff these agencies is deeply distrusted because they're from the establishment. Yet all of these sort of cowboys that have come in, the people that don't know how to fill out a form without submitting it 3 tries, have garnered a lot of bad headlines for the president.
Yeah, but it matters who is, you know, as the Rev said, it matters who's staffing the government. This is when you know, I lived through it with healthcare.gov when, you know, who's working on those computer programs deep in the bowels of CMS really matters, and they don't appreciate that how. The severity of that until you're like on the stage of like Puerto Rico or some big.
And the administration is failing to serve the American people as a result. That's the net result here.
Jonathan, is there any sense on your part? I'm running out of time here, so just a quick answer for me that the White House will sort of have the audacity to spin this as a cleaning house kind of move. We just couldn't tolerate private travel on our watch.
I think they're going to spin it this way, but honestly, Nicole, the long-term problem is this. Use the football analogy. If I see the ownership is changing, the coaches are changing every 6 months, this makes the White House a less attractive place for competent people to come work. And we all need a functional White House. So regardless of the spin that they use, if this means that bright men and women don't want to serve this country in this administration because they think it's a mess, we all suffer.
Jonathan, any last reporting on your phone? I'm staring at it from here.
Right now I have Donald Trump's Twitter feed up, and I'm waiting for him to weigh in on the Price's resignation. He has not done so yet. We suspect that we'll be hearing from sources, people from inside the White House, any minute now, so providing a little more context and background. But this is clear for a couple of days now. He was not going to survive this. And this is the president, in some ways, perhaps looking for a scapegoat, sending a message to the other members of his cabinet, hey, knock this off. This is not draining the swamp. But also, this is just Tom Price, who found the president's wrath and is like, time to go.
Jen, you have big news. You have a new book out. We're going to spend some time talking about it next time you're here. Will you come back on Monday?
Oh,
or any day that works for you?
absolutely.
All right. We're all out of time. My thanks to Evan McMullen, Jonathan Lemire, Jen Palmieri, the Rev Al Sharpton, and Jason Johnson. That does it for our hour. I'm Nicole.